My best friend is dating my abuser and wants me to reconcile with him, so I kicked her out of my home. Am I the a-hole? TW abuse. I've tried to write this out for days now, but I keep getting too upset to concentrate, so this might be a bit jumpy. I don't have family in the sense many understand family to be, so I've been pretty much a loner with one exception. My best friend Tammy. We met in middle school and just became joined at the hip. Things changed a bit in college. My parents forced me into a Christian out-of-state college. Tammy applied and got accepted to the other college in the town. So we both went out there and were roommates for 2 of the years before I met my first ever boyfriend. I will call him Trent. I moved in with him at the end of junior year, and I don't know when it started happening, but he went from charming and affectionate to controlling. I don't wish to upset anyone, so I will hit the pause button and warn you that below are some of the things he did for me to label him abusive. He would put me down and hint he could find someone better, or that if he cheats, it will be my fault since I wasn't this or that enough. It started to get a physical senior year. At first, it was him pushing me out of the way if he was walking by and I was in the path for whatever reason. Then he would slap me in arguments, calling me worthless, a waste of his time and young years, a broken toy no one will love. I didn't have any real self-esteem, so I stayed, thinking I was the problem, and when I called home about it, I was told that the problem was me. I started to make my exit plan the day after I graduated. He had proposed, and I hesitated, and he screamed at me to ask why, and then her swung and punched the wall right next to my head. I fell to the floor in fear, and he tried to comfort me and basically forced me into sex. When I woke up the next morning, the ring was on my finger, and he forced me again and later called it make-up sex, saying he forgave me for the way I treated him. That is an extremely short explanation, but there are so many stories of him forcing me into bed, hitting me, threatening to kill me, and more. So, I started to make a plan. I found a shelter in the city nearby. I started hiding things in the trunk of my car. I was in the service industry then, so I would take more shifts whenever I could and hide my cash tips and a box of tampons in my purse. And I finally was ready and left my phone. I had a new cheap one, and never went back. Tammy knew him and lived near us, but she didn't know about my plan. She messaged me on social media and I told her what happened. All of what happened. So she played dumb when he came around asking where I was, spinning the story that I was suicidal, and he was calling the police to find me. He never found me. That was years ago. I am now 36, and Tammy is too. Trent is 38. Tammy became a bit religious, but I told her as long as she is happy and safe, I don't care what she leans on in faith. She started to invite me out to her church 4 years ago, and I kept saying no until I very firmly said if she brought it up again, I would just walk out or hang up. I'm not against anyone believing what they want. I just don't want or need to be sucked into it. I honestly do not mean any offense to anyone of any faith. I myself am just agnostic, and if that ever will change, I will decide on my own, but I doubt it will. She got a job 2 years ago overseas. I acted excited for her, and I was also deeply devastated. Without her, I had no one else. By this time, I wasn't in contact much with family, and I do have surface-level friends, but no one who's known me in the real sense. I worked it out with my counselor and just carried on. We stayed in touch online and video chatted a lot. She would show me London, and I would show her my transition to moving to Texas. We would chronicle our explorations of our new cities, and then one day it started to slow down on her end. Right around the time, she went to visit a friend in our old college town. She then asked if she could fly to Texas sometime this summer, could stay with me for a few days, and I excitedly agreed. So early this month, just a few weeks ago, she came here. She was off the whole first day, but I figured she was tired. Then the next day, we went out and got drunk. She started to cry, and I got us an Uber back to my place and asked her what was wrong. That's when she asked me not to hate her and told me everything. She's with Trent. She's been with him for almost a year. I was too stunned to even say anything, and she went on and on about how it's not what I think and he has changed. She told me he found Jesus and turned his life around and deeply regrets the way he treated me. The more she talked, the more I just shut off. I didn't even have it in me to feel anger. I just stared at her frozen as she talked until she said, "Please just say something." So I did. I told her to get the fuck out. She started to explain it all again. She hated him forever, but they kept running into each other. He went to church and showed he was changed, blah blah blah. I didn't interrupt her, but when she stopped talking again, I just repeated myself. She argued more, and I would just listen and repeat until she grabbed her stuff and left. It was silent between us for a week until my dad texted me that Tammy called my parents crying and told me to get over myself. After all, it's not like I wanted to get back with him, right? And that's what I get for living with a man I wasn't married to. Then she texted the next week, rehashing her argument and pretty much demanding I video chat with him to see for myself that he's changed and forgive him. She then blamed me that they couldn't take the next steps in their relationship because I don't have a forgiving heart and that I was malicious when I kicked her out. I've spent all of this week trying to figure out if I'm insane to think this is a huge betrayal. A deal breaker. I mean, who even dates their friend's ex, for one? But this? I blocked her after she hinted that my version of things was exaggerated and malicious, but I don't have other friends to turn to about this. I don't think I am, but and her family think I am the a-hole, at least for kicking her out in a strange city alone when she was just being honest with me. Am I the a-hole? Next story. Am I the a-hole for refusing to share my lottery winnings with my boyfriend's dog, even though I promised? So, I, 26F, won a decent amount in the lottery, about $50,000. Before I won, my boyfriend, 29M, and I would always joke about how, if I ever hit it big, I'd split it 3 ways between me, him, and his dog, Baxter. Baxter is a golden retriever, and I love him, but I always thought it was, just a joke. Well, fast forward to me actually winning, and my boyfriend is now deadly serious about wanting me to give Baxter's share of the money. He insists I promised, and that Baxter deserves $10,000 in a dog trust fund for future vet bills, toys, and whatever he needs. I told him that's ridiculous. Baxter's a dog and doesn't need a trust fund. Now, my boyfriend is calling me selfish and saying I went back on my word. He says it's not about the dog. It's about me not keeping promises and that it shows I don't take our relationship seriously. But like, seriously? Over a dog? Here's where it gets weird. I actually did buy Baxter a pretty fancy dog bed and some expensive treats with part of the winnings, but my boyfriend is saying that doesn't count because it wasn't part of the official $10,000 I supposedly promised. He even brought up going to a lawyer to set up the dog trust fund to make it official. I feel like I'm in the twilight zone. Am I the a-hole for not giving a literal dog a chunk of my lottery winnings, even though I might have jokingly promised? Or is this whole thing just absurd? Next story. Am I the a-hole for breaking up with my boyfriend after the dog trust fund argument? Part 2 of refusing to share my lottery winnings with his dog. So, after thinking it over, I, 26F, finally confronted my boyfriend, 29M, about this whole absurd situation with the dog trust fund. I told him straight up that while I love Baxter, giving $10,000 to a dog is beyond ridiculous, and I can't believe it's turned into such a major issue in our relationship. His reaction? He doubled down. He kept going on about how it's not about the money, even though it's clearly all about the money, and that this is really about trust and me not keeping promises. He even said that if I can't keep this promise again about a dog, how can he trust me to keep my word on bigger things? At that point, I just couldn't take it anymore. I told him that this whole situation has raised huge red flags, and after 2 years together, I can't believe he's acting like this. I told him flat out that we're ending our relationship because his priorities seem completely out of whack. If he's this unreasonable over something so absurd, I can't imagine dealing with more serious issues down the road. Instead of reflecting on what I said, he got defensive and accused me of breaking trust. I'm honestly floored by how this has spiraled, but I feel like this breakup was inevitable with how he's been acting. Am I the a-hole for ending a 2-year relationship over a dog trust fund? Or is this as insane as it feels? Next story. Am I the a-hole for refusing to support my brother's kids after he passed away, even though I'm financially able to? I, 38M, have always had a complicated relationship with my younger brother, Jake, 34M. Growing up, we were never close. Jake was the golden child in the family, and I was always expected to support him, help him out, and be there for him, even when he made terrible decisions. He was always the reckless one, dropping out of college, getting into trouble, and having kids he couldn't really afford with multiple women. 5 months ago, Jake tragically passed away in a car accident, leaving behind 3 kids with 2 different women. It was devastating for the family, but I can't say Jake's life choices didn't contribute to some of his struggles. He had no life insurance, no savings, and left his kids in pretty bad shape financially. My parents, who are both retired and living on a fixed income, asked me to step up and help support Jake's kids. I'm financially stable, well off even. I run my own business, and my wife and I don't have kids of our own, so we live pretty comfortably. My parents think it's my responsibility to take over for Jake now that he's gone. They've been pressuring me to set up college funds for his kids, help with their living expenses, and even contribute to their mother's bills, as both women are struggling to make ends meet. Here's the thing. I don't want to. It sounds harsh, but I feel like I'm being asked to pay for Jake's mistakes. I don't have a relationship with these kids, and I barely had one with Jake. I've spent my whole life cleaning up his messes, and now that he's gone, I feel like I'm finally free of that obligation. I didn't ask him to have multiple kids with no plan for their future. My wife agrees with me, and she feels like we shouldn't have to sacrifice our financial freedom because of my brother's poor decisions. But now my family is furious with me. They're calling me heartless, saying I'm abandoning my own blood, and that Jake's kids will end up in poverty without my help. Some of my friends think I'm being too cold and should at least help a little, even if I don't go all in. I get that these kids didn't ask to be born into this situation, but I also don't think it's my responsibility to fix everything just because I'm the one with money. My wife and I worked hard to get where we are, and I feel like we shouldn't be expected to give that up for decisions we didn't make. So, am I the a-hole for refusing to financially support my late brother's kids, even though I can afford it?